I've been visiting zoos. I found this book very interesting. Again, it's from my father's library. It is Wild Wild World of Animals, Life in Zoos and Preserves. It's Time Life Television. It's a wonderfully illustrated book with essays and short essays and pictures. Really, one must have this. And you can see the ISBN number 0-913948-21-7. Copyright 1978, Time Life Films, Inc., all rights reserved. So a little book review that I'm going to give you, especially on zoos, because that caught my eye. These are the contents, and what fascinated me is zoos. A selection from Mangery Manor by Gerald Durrell. So I was fascinated by this piece by Gerald Durrell. And also, let me just talk about Carl Hagenbeck, internationally known as German animal dealer and trainer, who controlled animals by befriending them. He emphasized their intelligence and tractability over their ferocity. He created the prototype for open-air zoos. He's the inventor of the modern animal park. Zoo is short form for zoological park, a place where animals live in captivity and are put on display for people to view. So having said that, just let me read a little from here. For many people, zoos are simply a pleasant place to take a Sunday outing, a place where the casual stroller can be amused by the almost human antics of chimpanzees, chilled by a boa constrictor, that is a snake I think, and awed by the graceful majesty of a great lion crossing a simulated African veld. But what most visitors fail to realize is that a modern zoo, more varieties of animals can be observed at closer range than on a trek of the most untamed regions of the globe. Taken together, today's zoos constitute one of the world's greatest wildlife preserves. For example, he talks about the London Zoo, founded in 1828, has practically emphasized comprehensiveness and scholarship and is regarded as having achieved the greatest distinction among early modern zoos. The popular attraction in Regent's Park also gave zoos their name when the British, with a penchant for catchy concession that had already clipped public house to pub, quickly pruned zoological garden to zoo. Before the end of the century, most major cities in Europe and America opened zoos, including Amsterdam, Antwerp, Berlin, Washington, and New York. Most of these Washington, that's where we had gone to Washington Smithsonian Zoo, and the Toronto Zoo is really a great place to visit. Now, most of these 19th century zoological showcases boasted beautifully manicured grounds and often fanciful structures. Berlin built a pavilion in an Arabian motif for its zebras and a Persian structure for its wild horses. London housed its reptiles in a Swiss chalet, and Frankfurt used candy-striped tents for its camels and llamas. But unfortunately, these edifices did little to meet the real needs of their occupants. Throughout most of the year, the majority of the animals were locked up inside cramped cages and buildings that were usually poorly ventilated and overheated. Many animals suffered because of the mistaken belief that any creature from the tropics would expire if exposed for long to a cold draft. And at a time when much still remained to be learned about sanitation, the houses were far from hygienic. Not surprisingly, the first chimp introduced into London in 1835 died within 6 months. The next one, arriving in 1845, survived less than a year, and it was not until World War I that chimps or any other apes lived much longer in captivity. The radical transformation of zoos from the jailhouse atmosphere of the last century to the freer ambience commoner today is largely the doing of one man. Remember, we talked about this person, Karl Hagenbeck, the world's leading animal dealer in Europe during the 1880s and owner of a popular circus. Hagenbeck understood animals and had a sympathy for them that was then uncommon in either of his trades. The book is wonderfully laid out. That's why I'm giving this review, because just look at this. Adjacent page, you can see this. There is a beautiful picture, a photograph. I'm just going to read which picture is here. You must get the book and read it. Penguins at the San Diego Zoo. So continuing on with what Gerald Durrell has to say, he's talking about Carl. He knew that in winter large mammals needed fresh air and freedom of movement more than heat, and that most could acclimatize quite well if they had a sheltered retreat. He also felt that they should be placed in an environment without bars, one that bore the closest possible resemblance to their own native habitats. He put his ideas into action when he opened a zoo in Stellingen on the outskirts of Hamburg in 1907. To keep predator apart from prey, Hagenbeck devised an ingenious maze of deep trenches and water-filled moats that were often landscaped so that they were virtually invisible. In his African panorama, the gazelle, cranes, and flamingos in the foreground, as well as the antelopes and zebras just beyond them, seemed to be on the same plane as the lions, which were still farther away, far in the background. From the spectator's viewpoint, rocky promontories were inhabited by wild sheep and ibex. To a great extent, nearly every major zoo employs Hagenbeck's approach. With modern technology, however, many zoos have gone much further. They have created vast enclosures where varying conditions of temperatures, humidity, soil, and vegetation reproduce habitats ranging from rainforests to deserts. Environment control is especially important to such climate-sensitive animals as reptiles and small mammals. Day and night have been reversed in some exhibits so that owls, bats, and other nocturnal creatures can be observed in action during the day. For birds, dreary cage-lined rooms have been replaced by vaulting walkthroughs, fly-through aviaries, and some city-bound zoos, most notably London's and San Diego's, have created spacious annexes in nearby rural regions. With improved conditions and a better understanding of animal behavior, zoos also have had remarkable success in breeding new populations of such rare animals as the cheetah, and in a widely acclaimed breeding achievement, the first African elephant ever born in captivity in the New World was delivered at Knoxville, Tennessee Zoo early in 1978. Zoos provide havens for nearly all endangered species and for some near extinct animals. They are the last refuge. Zoos play a crucial role in spreading concern for the conservation of wildlife. If they did not bring home a glimpse of the reality of life for wild animals, far fewer people would be aware of these creatures. Fewer still would be knowledgeable about the troubles of some and the sheer desperation of others. So talking about zoos, let me talk. We just visited the Toronto Zoo with the kids, and let me tell you, it's just awesome. I have no words to describe. It is located in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and it is spread around 710 acres. That is, it is the largest zoo in Canada. It is divided into zoo geographic regions, 7 of them, and as under Indo-Malaya, Africa, Americas, Tundra, Trek, Australasia, Eurasia, and the Canadian domain. So, some animals are displayed indoors in pavilions and outdoors in what would be their naturalistic environments, with viewing at many levels. It also has areas such as a kids zoo, waterside theatre, and Splash Island. Well, it is one of the most it has the most diverse collection of animals on display, I'm sure, and they boast about it worldwide. If you're talking about that, it's that. And they say that it's currently home to over more than 5,000 animals. 5,000 animals, and that includes invertebrates and fish. Represents over 500 species. The zoo is open, of course, it's open every day, etc. And even one day to see the zoo it's too little a time. So in fact, to see the zoo, at least you take a week, go every day, see that, go to each pavilion, you learn so much. The antiques of the orangutan is so fascinating. I also remember that how they're in an area where they have the caterpillar, chrysalis, etc. From that stage, how the butterfly emerged, and some of the other butterfly is emerging. And then we also saw the peacock dance. I mean, and then there are trainers who come with their birds and show how they pray. And there are guides who tell us so much about the animals. It's a wonderful way of teaching kids about every animal. I think it's a zoo to visit. So of course, this is a great book to have. And talking about zoos, I think it's a great zoo to visit. And of course, if you go to the Smithsonian Zoo, it's a nice, small, compact zoo which can be done within a day. And besides that, I've been to the Hyderabad Zoo, which is again it's very nice, and also New Delhi Zoo, which is spread over a large area. But let me just tell you, the best zoo that I have really admired and enjoyed is the Toronto Zoo.